It was 8:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve when my daughter looked at me in the Italian marble foyer and said the words that would shatter everything I believed about being a mother. "Mom, I need to be honest with you. This year we're doing Christmas differently. Just us. Me, David, the kids, and a few close friends. You understand, right?" I stood there holding the pumpkin pie I'd started making at 5 in the morning. The lattice crust that took me 3 hours because I wanted it perfect. My hands trembled so badly I could feel the aluminum pan cutting into my skin. My heart beat like a funeral drum echoing through that massive hall. "What do you mean, just you?" My voice came out thin, childlike, pathetic. Sarah, my only daughter, the child I raised alone after her father abandoned us when she was 3, couldn't even look at me, as if I were a persistent beggar at her door. "It's nothing personal, Mom. We just want something more intimate this year. If there are any leftovers, I'll save some for you." Leftovers. My daughter was offering me scraps of food as if I were a stray dog waiting for crumbs from my own family. Behind Sarah, I could see the 12-foot Christmas tree, professionally decorated with expensive glass ornaments that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Not a single handmade decoration from her childhood. Nothing of us remained in that house. "I've been cooking for 3 days," I whispered. "I made your favorite stuffing. I have presents for Emma and Jacob in my car." She glanced at her watch. An actual glance at her watch while I was bleeding out in front of her. "You can leave the presents by the door. David's partners are arriving at 9:30, and I still need to change." David's partners. Strangers. And I, the woman who knew the sound of her first laugh, who held her hair back when she had the flu, who taught her to ride a bike in the parking lot behind our apartment building, I was the one being dismissed. I swallowed the pain, nodded like I understood, and walked back to my car with whatever dignity I had left. The drive home was 14 minutes. I counted every single one, watching Christmas lights blur past while my daughter's words played on repeat. Leftovers. Intimate. Nothing personal. As if erasing your mother from Christmas was just a scheduling preference. Before I continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and leave your like. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening to my story from? I really want to know how far it has reached. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 69 years old, and I need to tell you how I got here because this story doesn't start on Christmas Eve. It starts 26 years earlier, when I still believed love could save anything. I was 22 when I met Robert Matthews at a county fair in Pennsylvania. We married 4 months later in a courthouse ceremony. I was pregnant with Sarah by our 6-month anniversary. I thought we were building something. I thought wrong. Robert left when Sarah was 3. He came home one Tuesday, packed a duffel bag, and said he wasn't cut out for family life. Those were his exact words. He sent 2 child support checks and then disappeared completely. He just didn't want the ones he had. So it was me and Sarah in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. I got a job at Mel's Diner on Route 40 because they'd let me bring Sarah in during my shifts. I worked doubles on weekends. My feet ached so badly, some nights I'd have to soak them in Epsom salt for an hour before I could sleep. But we made it work. Sarah was my whole world. My entire existence revolved around making sure she had what she needed. I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans for 4 years, so she could have new school clothes every fall. I cut my own hair so she could go to a real salon before school photos. When she wanted piano lessons, I picked up extra shifts and we ate rice and beans for 6 months straight. I loved being her mother. It gave me purpose in a way nothing else ever had. Every morning when I woke her up for school, every lunch I packed with a little note inside, it all meant something. I was building a person. I was giving her the childhood I never had. And she was brilliant. She devoured books, asked questions that made her teachers suggest skipping her ahead a grade. She got a full scholarship to Penn State. Full ride. When that acceptance letter came, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. All those years of sacrifice had worked. But here's what nobody tells you about sending your only child off to college when you're a single mother. You don't just lose your kid, you lose your purpose. Sarah went to school, and I realized I'd spent 20 years building my entire identity around being her mother, and now she didn't need me anymore. Sarah did well at school. She met David at a volunteer event their junior year. He came from money, real money. His parents owned a chain of dental practices. When Sarah first brought him home, I could see him cataloging everything that was old and worn and cheap in our tiny apartment. They got married 3 years after graduation. The wedding was at a country club I'd never even driven past before. Sarah wore a dress that cost more than I made in 6 months. I wore the best outfit I owned and still felt like everyone could see I didn't belong. The distance started slowly. They bought a house 40 minutes away. Sunday dinners became every other Sunday, then once a month, then whenever they could fit it in. Sarah had the twins, and I understood she was busy. I didn't want to be a burden, but somewhere between her wedding and that Christmas Eve, I went from being her mother to being an obligation, someone to tolerate out of duty rather than love. And I saw it happening, and I let it happen because I didn't know how to fight it without seeming needy. Standing in my kitchen that Christmas Eve, I finally let myself feel the full weight of it. 26 years I'd given her. 26 years of putting her first, of sacrificing everything. And now she couldn't even give me one evening, one Christmas. I didn't cry. I was too numb for tears. I just sat there in the dark, listening to my neighbors laugh and sing carols, and wondered when exactly love had stopped being enough. What I didn't know then, sitting in that dark kitchen, was that in 37 days, everything would change again. In 37 days, my phone would ring and my daughter's voice would crack with desperation, and I would have to decide who I wanted to be. The mother who showed up no matter what, or the woman who finally learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just slow self-destruction with a noble name. Christmas morning, I woke up at 6:15 a.m. out of pure habit. For 26 years, that had been the time Sarah would come running into my room, unable to contain her excitement. Even after she moved out, my body never forgot. It still woke me up at 6:15 on Christmas morning, expecting joy that never came. I made coffee and sat by my window watching the snow fall. Across the way, I could see families in their windows, kids tearing into wrapping paper, parents laughing and taking photos. I wondered if Sarah was taking photos of Emma and Jacob. I wondered if they asked about me. The day stretched out like a desert. I had nowhere to go, no one to call. The diner was closed. My neighbor had gone to visit her son in Boston. Everyone was tucked away in their own worlds, their own families. I pulled out the old photo albums, the ones I'd filled so carefully when Sarah was growing up. Every school photo, every birthday, every Halloween costume I'd sewn by hand because store-bought ones were too expensive. There was Sarah at her 8th grade graduation, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe, telling me I was the best mom in the world. When had that girl become the woman who offered me leftovers? I fixated on one photo. Sarah was 11, maybe 12. We'd gone to the county fair. Money was tight that summer, but I'd saved for weeks so we could go. In the photo, we're on the Ferris wheel, both of us laughing. She's looking at me like I'm her whole world, like I'm enough. I stared at that photo for an hour, trying to figure out where that little girl went, trying to understand what I did wrong. Things had changed when Sarah went to college. She met people who came from money, people who'd never had to count pennies. She started talking differently, using words I had to look up. She stopped eating the comfort foods I used to make and started ordering quinoa bowls and acai smoothies. She joined a sorority full of girls whose parents were doctors and lawyers. And I was proud of her. I wanted her to expand her world beyond the limitations of mine. But with every new experience, with every new friend from a better background, I could feel her pulling away. Like someone slowly turning down the volume until eventually you realize you can't hear the music anymore. When she brought David home that first time, I saw the future in his eyes. He was polite, but there was this careful distance in the way he interacted with me. Like he was being introduced to a colleague's eccentric aunt rather than his girlfriend's mother. I remember Sarah correcting me that night. We were alone in the kitchen, and I said something like, "He don't understand." And she stopped me mid-sentence. "Doesn't, Mom. He doesn't understand. You need to watch your grammar. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a door closing. Like she was telling me I was an embarrassment, that the way I spoke wasn't good enough for her new life. I started being more careful around them. I bought a grammar book. I practiced speaking more properly. I stopped telling stories about work because I could see Sarah tense up whenever I mentioned the diner. The engagement happened fast. David proposed on a beach in the Bahamas during a vacation I wasn't invited on. Sarah called me from the resort, breathless with excitement, and I tried to sound happy even though part of me was thinking about how I'd never been on an airplane, never had anyone love me enough to propose on a beach at sunset. Planning the wedding was when I really understood how much I didn't fit into Sarah's new world. His mother, Patricia Chen, took over everything. She hired a wedding planner, chose the venue, designed the invitations. I was consulted on nothing. When I offered to help pay for something, Patricia laughed and said, "Oh, Helen, that's sweet, but we have it covered." I spent 2 months' salary on my mother of the bride dress. When I showed Sarah, she suggested maybe I should look for something more formal, more in line with the venue's aesthetic. I didn't even know venues had aesthetics. The wedding day was beautiful. Sarah looked like a princess. And I sat in the front row in my second-choice dress that still wasn't quite right, smiling until my face hurt, playing the role of the happy mother while feeling like a fraud. When it was time for my dance with Sarah, the DJ played the wrong song. Sarah barely looked at me. She was scanning the room, making sure everything was perfect. We swayed back and forth for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. I counted. At the end of the night, I found Sarah in the bridal suite, changing out of her wedding dress. For just a moment, it was like we'd traveled back in time. Just me and my daughter in a quiet room. "You looked so beautiful today," I told her, my voice thick with emotion. "Thanks, Mom." She was focused on removing her veil, not looking at me. "I'm so proud of you. So proud of the woman you've become." She finally looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pity. "I know, Mom. Thank you for everything you did to get me here. Everything I did to get her here." Past tense. Like my purpose had been fulfilled, and now I could be retired, put on a shelf somewhere, taken down occasionally for display, but no longer necessary. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of slow erasure, of canceled plans and forgotten phone calls and holidays that never quite worked out with their schedule. 4 years of me trying to be understanding, trying not to be needy, trying to take up as little space as possible so she wouldn't have a reason to cut me out completely. And then she did it anyway. Sitting in my apartment on Christmas Day, surrounded by photos of a daughter who didn't want me anymore, I made a decision. I was done begging for crumbs. I was done pretending it didn't hurt. I was done making myself smaller and smaller in the hopes that eventually I'd be small enough to fit into whatever tiny space she was willing to give me. I didn't know what that meant yet, didn't know how to actually implement boundaries. But something shifted in me that day. Some foundational belief that love meant accepting whatever treatment came your way finally cracked. I put the photo albums away and made myself a proper dinner. Not fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but I set the table like I was expecting company. I used a real plate, not Tupperware. I poured wine in an actual wine glass instead of a coffee mug. I lit a candle. I treated myself with the care I'd been waiting for someone else to show me. It felt ridiculous at first. A 69-year-old woman playing tea party with herself on Christmas night. But as I sat there, eating slowly, tasting it instead of just shoveling it down, something loosened in my chest. Some knot I'd been carrying for so long, I'd forgotten it was there. I wasn't just angry at Sarah. I was angry at myself for allowing it, for accepting less and less until I'd taught her that this was acceptable, that you could treat people you claimed to love like inconveniences rather than people to be cherished. My mother used to say, "You teach people how to treat you." I'd spent 26 years teaching Sarah that she could take everything and give nothing, and I'd be grateful for whatever scraps she threw my way. That lesson had clearly been learned. The question was, could I unlearn it? Could I rewrite the rules after decades of playing by the old ones? Because unlearning meant consequences. It meant Sarah might not like the new version of me. It meant I might lose her completely instead of just slowly bleeding out over years. But here's what I was beginning to understand. I'd already lost her. The little girl who loved me unconditionally was gone. The adult woman who'd replaced her saw me as an obligation at best, an embarrassment at worst. Maybe it was time to stop mourning a relationship that no longer existed and start figuring out who I was beyond being Sarah's mother. I had no idea that in 33 days, my phone would ring with a desperate plea, and I'd have to choose between the woman I'd always been and the woman I was learning to become. That the choice would be so much harder than I ever imagined. The week after Christmas was the longest of my life. I kept waiting for Sarah to call, to apologize, to at least acknowledge what had happened. Nothing came. Not a text, not a voicemail, not even a thank you for the presents I'd left on her doorstep. New Year's Eve, I worked a double shift at the diner. I volunteered because the thought of sitting alone in my apartment watching the ball drop was more than I could handle. At least at work, I was useful. Around 10 p.m., a family came in. Mother, father, 2 kids, and a grandmother. The grandmother sat at the end of the booth, and I watched the little girl climb into her lap, wrapping her arms around her neck, whispering something that made the old woman's face light up like sunrise. I had to excuse myself and cry in the supply closet. My manager, Rita, found me there, mascara running down my face, hyperventilating into a stack of napkins. "My daughter doesn't want me," I heard myself say. "She had Christmas without me. She offered me leftovers like I was a stray dog." Rita sat down on an overturned bucket next to me. "Helen, honey, sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us worst because they're the only ones who can reach that deep. But why? What did I do wrong? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But sitting here torturing yourself isn't going to change anything. You need to decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not." Her words stayed with me. What was I willing to accept? The question felt impossible because I didn't know how to not accept whatever Sarah chose to give me. Being her mother wasn't something I could resign from. Or at least, it was who I thought I was. January crawled by in a gray blur. I started doing something I'd never done before. I started tracking things. I kept a small notebook where I wrote down every time I reached out to Sarah versus every time she reached out to me. The results were damning. In 3 weeks, I called her 7 times. She answered once, said she was busy, and promised to call back. She never did. I sent 12 texts. She responded to 3, all with single-word answers or emoji. I invited her to lunch 4 times. She said yes once, then canceled the morning of because Emma had a dentist appointment she'd forgotten about. But here's the thing. If Emma had a dentist appointment, that meant Sarah was free. She'd just chosen to run errands rather than have lunch with me. The cancellation wasn't about the kids. It was about not wanting to spend time with me. I started noticing other things, like how Sarah never asked about my life anymore. Our conversations were status updates from her end. The kids did this. David got that promotion. They were remodeling the kitchen. I'd listen and ask follow-up questions because that's what mothers do, right? But Sarah never asked about mine, never asked how work was or what I did with my time. It was like I existed in stasis between our interactions, a character she could pick up and put down whenever convenient, with no internal life of my own. I thought about the last birthday she'd acknowledged, my 67th 2 years ago. She'd sent flowers to the diner with a card in someone else's handwriting. A service? She'd used a service. When I thanked her, she'd said, "Oh, good, they arrived on time." Like I was a client, not her mother. My 68th birthday she forgot completely. Called me 3 days later and blamed it on her busy schedule. I started thinking back over the years, looking for when things changed. When did I stop being mom and start being an obligation? It was during her sophomore year at Penn State. She joined that sorority, Delta Gamma, full of girls from wealthy families. She started making excuses about why I couldn't visit. When I finally did, 6 months into the school year, her roommate's parents were there too, a couple from Connecticut who'd driven up in a Mercedes. I could see them assessing me, my goodwill clothes, my nervous habit of apologizing too much. After they left, Sarah said something I pretended not to hear. She was talking to her roommate, thinking I was in the bathroom. Sorry about my mom. She's a little rough around the edges. She didn't go to college or anything. Sorry about my mom. Those 4 words were the beginning of the end. The signs were everywhere after that. She stopped inviting me to campus events. When she graduated, she didn't want photos taken with just me. It was always group shots, her friends, David's family. When she got engaged, I wasn't told first. I found out on Facebook. She'd posted a photo of her hand with the ring, and I'd stared at my phone in the break room, trying to process that my daughter had gotten engaged and hadn't called me. When I finally reached her, hours later, she was breathless with excitement. I asked why she hadn't called me first. "Oh, Mom, I was just so overwhelmed. I posted it, and then everyone started calling and messaging. It was crazy." Everyone. She'd called everyone, just not me. I should have said something then. But I was so terrified of being labeled as needy, as difficult, as the kind of mother nobody wants. So I swallowed it. I congratulated her. I played my role. Sometimes we trust too much in those who don't deserve it. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Share your story in the comments. I want to read you and know I'm not alone in this. The wedding planning was a masterclass in exclusion disguised as inclusion. Patricia would schedule dress shopping trips during my work hours. When I mentioned I could try to get the time off, Sarah would say, "Don't worry about it, Mom. We know you're busy," making it sound like I was the one who wasn't available. The bridal shower was at Patricia's country club. I sat in a corner, nursing a glass of champagne, watching my daughter laugh with women who'd known her for 5 years, while barely acknowledging the woman who'd known her for 25. At one point, one of David's cousins asked how I knew Sarah. When I said I was her mother, she looked surprised. "Oh, Patricia pointed you out earlier, but I thought you were the caterer on break." It wasn't meant as an insult, but it confirmed what I already knew. I didn't fit. The signs had been there for years. I'd just been too afraid to read them, too desperate to believe that love was enough, that if I just kept showing up, kept being supportive, kept asking for nothing, eventually she'd remember that I was more than just an obligation. But love isn't enough, not when it's only flowing one direction. January became February. I stopped calling Sarah. Not as a punishment, but as an experiment. I wanted to see how long it would take her to notice. 2 weeks passed, then 3, then a month. My phone never rang with her number, and I started to understand a fundamental truth I'd been avoiding my entire adult life. I had loved my daughter so completely, so unconditionally, that I taught her my love was infinite and free and required no maintenance. I taught her she could ignore me, dismiss me, exclude me, and I'd still be there, grateful for whatever attention she deigned to give me. I taught her that mothers don't have feelings that matter, boundaries that should be respected, or needs that deserve acknowledgement. I'd taught her wrong, and now I was paying the price. It was February 14th when I realized I'd stopped hoping. Valentine's Day had never meant much after Robert left, but Sarah used to make it special when she was little. She'd bring me homemade cards from school, construction paper hearts covered in glitter. "You're the best mom in the whole world," one said when she was 7. I still had it, pressed between the pages of an old cookbook. This year, Valentine's Day was just another Tuesday. I worked the lunch shift, served heart-shaped pancakes to couples and families, smiled while my feet ached and my heart felt like a stone. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. For one stupid, hopeful second, I thought it might be Sarah. It was a spam call about my car's extended warranty. I laughed right there in the middle of the diner. Rita looked at me like I'd finally lost it. Maybe this is what rock bottom looked like. A 69-year-old woman laughing at a spam call because, for a moment, she'd thought her daughter had remembered she existed. That night, I went to a movie alone. Some romantic comedy that was supposed to be feel-good, but just made me feel empty. I watched a story about a mother and daughter who fought and reconciled and hugged at the end, and I wanted to scream at the screen that real life didn't work like that. Real life was daughters who grew up and away and never looked back. When I got home, there was a message on my answering machine. My heart jumped. But it wasn't Sarah. It was the dentist's office reminding me about my cleaning. Even my dentist was more reliable at reaching out than my own daughter. I started noticing mothers and daughters everywhere. At the grocery store, laughing over pasta sauce. At the pharmacy, arms around each other's shoulders. At the park, 3 generations having a picnic, the grandmother holding a baby. Each sighting felt like a paper cut. Small on its own, but enough of them and you start to bleed. I thought about reaching out again, picking up the phone, pretending nothing was wrong, slipping back into the comfortable role of the mother who accepted whatever crumbs were offered. It would be so easy, but I didn't, because something had shifted in me that Christmas Eve, and it was growing stronger every day. A small, quiet voice that kept asking, why? Why was I the only one trying? Why did my love have to be endless and unconditional while hers was rationed out like a limited resource? I started going to the library on my days off. I checked out books about family dynamics, about boundaries, about narcissism and codependency. I read about mothers and daughters, about how to tell the difference between healthy independence and toxic rejection. One book talked about emotional neglect, how children who grow up feeling unseen often become adults who struggle with empathy. But Sarah hadn't grown up feeling unseen. I'd seen her. I'd watched her every moment, celebrated every achievement. If anything, I'd seen her too much. I'd made her the center of my universe. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd loved her so intensely that she'd learned to expect worship rather than relationship. Maybe I'd given her so much that she'd never learned the reciprocal nature of love. Or maybe I was just making excuses for her. Maybe the truth was simpler and more painful. She just didn't love me the way I loved her. Maybe she never had. I found myself thinking about my own mother. We hadn't been close, but at least our relationship was honest. With Sarah, it was worse because she maintained the illusion. She called me Mom. She sent obligatory holiday cards. She posted photos on Facebook with captions about family being everything. She performed the role of loving daughter for her social media audience while giving me nothing in private. The performance was the cruelest part, because it meant she knew what a loving daughter was supposed to look like. She just didn't think I deserved that version of her. February turned into early March. The weather started to thaw. I felt like I was thawing too, painful and messy. All the feelings I'd frozen for years were starting to surface. Anger, resentment, grief for the relationship I'd thought we had but maybe never did. I started therapy. Rita had mentioned her therapist helped her through her divorce, and I thought maybe someone objective could help me make sense of this. Dr. Phillips was younger than me, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made me see things differently. "Tell me about a happy memory with Sarah," she said in our first session. I told her about the time Sarah was 9, and we'd saved up for 6 months to go to Hershey Park. Sarah had ridden the roller coaster 5 times, screaming with joy, and at the end of the day she'd hugged me and said it was the best day of her entire life. "And when was the last time you felt that kind of joy with her?" Dr. Phillips asked. I couldn't remember. I genuinely could not remember the last time I'd felt pure, uncomplicated joy in my daughter's presence. "What does that tell you?" She pressed gently. "That I've been mourning a relationship that ended years ago," I whispered. "That I've been trying to resurrect something that's already dead." She didn't confirm or deny, just sat with me while I cried for the first time since Christmas Eve. Not quiet, dignified tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. I cried for the little girl who loved me unconditionally. I cried for the mother I'd been, who'd believed love could conquer anything. I cried for all the years I'd wasted hoping things would magically return to how they used to be. "Here's what I want you to think about," Dr. Phillips said, when I'd finally calmed down. "You've spent 26 years being the mother Sarah needed. Have you ever asked yourself what kind of mother you want to be? Not for her benefit, but for yours?" The question stunned me. It had never occurred to me that being a mother was something I could define for myself, rather than something that was defined by my child's needs and wants. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then maybe that's where we start." I left that session feeling raw, but also strangely lighter. like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks and someone had finally given me permission to set it down. That night, I made myself dinner again. I made salmon with roasted vegetables. I set the table. I poured wine. I turned on music. And I ate slowly, tasting every bite, treating myself like someone worth caring for. I thought about Dr. Phillips's question. What kind of mother did I want to be? Not the one who accepted scraps and called it love. Not the one who martyred herself and called it sacrifice. I wanted to be a mother who could love deeply but also have boundaries, who could care without becoming invisible, who could give without being depleted, who could say no when no was the right answer. But I didn't know if I was strong enough to become that person. Didn't know if I could unlearn 26 years of conditioning. March 15th. That was the date that changed everything. I was folding laundry in my apartment when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then a voice I barely recognized because I'd never heard it sound like this. Desperate, broken, terrified. Mom? Sarah's voice cracked on the word. Mom, I need help. Please. I need your help. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. 6 weeks of silence, and now she was calling me, crying, begging. Every instinct I'd honed over 26 years of motherhood screamed at me to say yes, to ask what was wrong, to drop everything and fix whatever was broken. But that small, quiet voice that had been growing stronger since Christmas Eve whispered something different. Wait. Listen. Don't just react. Find out what she wants before you give away what you need. What's wrong? My voice came out steadier than I felt. It's David. She was sobbing now, words tumbling out in a panicked rush. He needs surgery, emergency surgery. His appendix ruptured, and there were complications, infections. He's in ICU. And the bills, Mom, the bills are already over $90,000, and insurance is fighting it, and we don't have that kind of money. And the hospital is saying, if we can't prove we can pay, they're going to transfer him to county, and I don't know what to do, and I'm so scared, and I need help. Mom, please, I need money. I need $90,000, and I know you have that retirement fund from the diner, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death, but it is. It's life or death, and you're my mother, and I need you. The words hit me like a physical blow. $90,000, my retirement fund, the money I'd been contributing to for 32 years, $15 a week that I could barely afford. The money that was supposed to be my safety net, my security, the only thing standing between me and poverty in my old age. She wanted it. Of course she wanted it. That's why she'd called. Not because she missed me. Not because she realized how badly she'd hurt me. Not because she wanted to repair our relationship. She called because she needed something from me. Just like always. And in that moment, standing in my tiny apartment with a basket of laundry at my feet and my daughter sobbing on the phone, I had to decide who I was going to be. Time stopped. That's the only way I can describe it. Sarah's words hung in the air like smoke, and I stood frozen in my living room, the phone pressed against my ear, my daughter's desperate sobs filling the silence I'd been living in for 6 weeks. $90,000. My entire retirement fund was $94,312. I knew the exact number because I checked it obsessively. It was the only security I had. The only proof that 32 years of aching feet and burned hands and smiled through insults had amounted to something tangible. Mom, are you there? Please say something. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My mind was racing, memories flooding in unbidden. Sarah at Christmas, telling me to leave her house. Sarah offering me leftovers. Sarah's 6 weeks of silence. And now she needed me. Now I was useful again. When did this happen? I heard myself ask, my voice strange and distant. 3 days ago. He collapsed at work, they rushed him to surgery, and everything went wrong. Mom, they had to open him up again. There's sepsis, he's on so many medications, and the bills just keep coming, and I don't know what to do. Her voice rose to a wail. I'm so scared. What if he dies? The kids need their father. I need my husband. Please, Mom. Please help us. 3 days ago. She'd been dealing with this crisis for 3 days and hadn't called me until she needed money. Not to tell me what was happening, not to ask for emotional support, only when she needed my bank account. Have you called David's parents? I asked. Silence. Then, they've already given us $20,000, but their money is tied up in investments and they can't liquidate quickly enough. We need the money now, Mom. Today. The hospital administrator said if we don't have proof of payment by tomorrow, they're transferring him. Patricia and Gerald Chen, with their dental practice empire and vacation home in Martha's Vineyard, had given $20,000 like it was pocket change. And now, my daughter was asking me to drain my entire life savings because her wealthy in-laws couldn't access their money fast enough. What about loans? Medical financing? There are programs. We've tried everything. Sarah's voice turned sharp, frustrated. We don't qualify for the programs because we make too much. The banks won't process loans fast enough. David's condition is critical, Mom. We don't have time to wait for bureaucracy. I need you to wire the money tomorrow morning. Please, you have to help us. Have to. Not could you, not would you. Have to. Like it wasn't even a question. Like my money was already hers, just waiting to be claimed. Sarah, I said slowly, that's my retirement fund. That's everything I have. I know, Mom, and I'll pay you back, I swear. As soon as we figure out the insurance mess and David's back to work, we'll pay back every penny. But right now I need you to be there for your family, for your grandchildren. They might lose their father. Don't you care about that? Don't you care? She was actually asking me if I cared. This woman who'd excluded me from Christmas, who'd gone 6 weeks without speaking to me. Of course I care, I whispered. Then help us. Please, Mom, I'm begging you. I know things have been weird between us. I know I should have called more, but this is bigger than that. This is life and death. You're my mother. This is what mothers do. This is what mothers do. We sacrifice everything. We give until there's nothing left. We light ourselves on fire to keep our children warm, and we're supposed to be grateful for the opportunity. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, exactly. More like split open, revealing something I'd been protecting for so long I'd forgotten it was there. My own worth, my own needs, my own right to be treated with basic dignity and respect. I need time to think about it, I said. The crying stopped abruptly. What? Mom, there's no time to think. I just explained that. The hospital needs an answer tomorrow. Then I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Are you serious right now? Her voice shifted from desperate to angry in a heartbeat. David could die and you need to think about it? What kind of person are you? What kind of person was I? That was exactly the question I'd been asking myself for 6 weeks. What kind of person gives everything and accepts nothing in return? What kind of person allows herself to be treated like she's disposable? A doormat. That's what kind of person. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking so violently I had to set the phone down. I stood in my living room, laundry forgotten, and felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One step forward and everything would change. One step back and I'd return to the woman I'd always been, the woman who said yes to everything, who believed that's what love looked like. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sarah's words playing on repeat. This is what mothers do. But was it? Was it really? I thought about my mother. Cold, distant, but honest about her limitations. She'd never drained her savings account for me. At the time, I'd resented her for it. Sworn I'd be different, better. But maybe she'd understood something I was only now learning. That you can't pour from an empty cup. That martyring yourself doesn't make you a good mother. It just makes you an empty shell of a person who teaches their children that love means self-destruction. I got up around 3 a.m. and made tea. Sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten cold leftovers on Christmas Eve, and really looked at my life. What did I have beyond being Sarah's mother? My job at the diner. But I was 69. How many more years could I realistically work on my feet? A few casual friends, but no one close. No hobbies, no passions, no identity separate from the role I'd been playing for 26 years. If I gave Sarah that money, I'd have nothing left. No savings, no security, no safety net if I got sick or simply couldn't work anymore. I'd be completely vulnerable, entirely dependent on the generosity of a daughter who'd shown me repeatedly that she saw me as an obligation, not a person she loved. And she'd said she'd pay me back, but would she? Or would it become another thing that was too inconvenient? Would I end up spending my final years in poverty while she and David recovered their finances and bought a bigger house, and I became the embarrassing grandmother they hid away because I'd given them everything and ended up with nothing? While I'm telling you all this, I wonder where you might be listening to me. Write your city's name in the comments. I'd love to know where my words are reaching. The sun came up, and I still didn't have an answer. I went through the motions of my morning routine like a robot. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Around 10 a.m., I called Dr. Phillips. Her receptionist said she didn't have any openings, but when I started crying on the phone, she squeezed me in at lunch. I told her everything: the phone call, the money, Sarah's words, my confusion, my anger, my guilt for even hesitating when my son-in-law might die. Dr. Phillips listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned forward and asked me a question that changed everything. Helen, if Sarah had called you 3 days ago, not to ask for money, but just to tell you what was happening, to cry with you, to share her fear, would you feel differently about this request? The answer came immediately. Yes. If she'd wanted me, not just my money, I'd give her everything without thinking twice. So this isn't really about the money, is it? No. My voice broke. It's about the fact that I only matter when I'm useful, that I only exist to serve her needs, that after everything I've given, I'm still not enough to deserve a phone call unless she wants something from me. And if you give her this money, what does that teach her? I stared at Dr. Phillips, the truth settling over me like ice water. That she was right, that I don't deserve respect or consideration, that she can treat me however she wants, and I'll still show up with my wallet open and my mouth shut. And is that the relationship you want? No. The word came out fierce, certain. No, I don't want that. I've been that person my whole life, and it hasn't made her love me more. It's just made her respect me less. Dr. Phillips nodded slowly. So, what do you want to do? I thought about David in that hospital bed. I thought about Emma and Jacob, my grandchildren. I thought about Sarah, desperate and scared and reaching out to the mother she'd ignored for 6 weeks. And I thought about myself, 69 years old, alone, tired, worth exactly $94,312, and the question of whether I deserved to keep it. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to give her everything because that's who I've always been. But another part of me is screaming at me to say no. To finally put myself first, to stop enabling this pattern where I give everything and she gives nothing. Both parts are valid, Dr. Phillips said gently. This isn't about being selfish or selfless, it's about being whole, about recognizing that you matter too, that your needs and your security and your future are just as important as hers. I left her office with more questions than answers, but as I walked to my car, something became clear. Whatever I decided, it couldn't be based on guilt or fear or the desperate hope that if I just gave enough, she'd finally love me the way I needed to be loved. It had to be based on what was right, not for her, for me. I had until tomorrow morning to figure out what that meant. I spent the rest of that day driving. Not going anywhere specific, just driving through neighborhoods I'd never seen, past houses with families inside, past lives I'd never live. My phone rang 6 times. Sarah. Each time I let it go to voicemail. Each time the message was more frantic. Mom, please call me back. Mom, the hospital needs an answer by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Please. Mom, David's fever is getting worse. I need to know you're going to help us. Mom, if something happens to David because you were too selfish to help, I'll never forgive you. Do you understand that? Never. The last message made me pull over into a gas station parking lot. My hands were shaking again. Selfish. She'd called me selfish. Me, the woman who'd worked 2 jobs to keep her clothed and fed. Me, the woman who'd worn shoes with holes for 2 years so she could have new ones. Me, the woman who'd sacrificed every dream for herself so Sarah could have a better life. Selfish. I sat in that parking lot and laughed until I cried, and then I just cried, ugly and loud and not caring who saw me. A woman knocked on my window, asked if I was okay, if she should call someone. I told her I was fine, just having a hard day. She looked at me with such kindness, and I realized a stranger was showing me more compassion than my own daughter had in years. When I finally stopped crying, I did something I hadn't done since I was a young woman. I prayed, not in a church, not with any formal words, just a desperate whisper into the universe. Please, help me know what's right. Help me see clearly. Help me be strong enough to do what needs to be done, whatever that is. I drove home as the sun was setting. When I got to my apartment building, there was a Mercedes SUV in the visitor's parking spot. My stomach dropped. Sarah was sitting on the steps. When she saw me, she stood up so fast she stumbled. She looked terrible. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, face blotchy from crying, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. I'd never seen her look so undone. Mom. She walked toward me quickly, and for a moment, I thought she was going to hug me. But she stopped a few feet away, like there was an invisible barrier between us. Why haven't you been answering your phone? I've been worried sick. You've been worried? The words came out sharper than I intended. About me or about your answer? She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I walked past her toward the building entrance. You don't call me for 6 weeks. You exclude me from Christmas. You offer me leftovers like I'm a dog begging at your table. But now you're worried about me? Mom, I know I should have handled Christmas differently. Should have handled it differently. I spun around. Sarah, you dismissed me like I was nothing, like 26 years of loving you, of sacrificing for you, of being there for every single moment of your life meant absolutely nothing. I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me? I made a mistake, okay? I'm human. But David is dying, Mom. Dying. And you're standing here rehashing Christmas like that matters more than my husband's life. It does matter. It matters because it's part of a pattern you refuse to see. You only want me when you need something from me. Otherwise, I'm an inconvenience, an embarrassment, something to be managed and minimized and kept at a distance. That's not true. But she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. When's my birthday, Sarah? What? My birthday. When is it? She stared at me, mouth opening and closing. It's in... Mom, what does this have to... September 12th, you forgot last year. Didn't call until 3 days later. The year before, you sent flowers through a service. I've been busy. When did you last ask about my life? About how I'm doing, what I'm feeling, if I'm okay? Silence. When did you last call me just to talk, not because you needed something? When did you last treat me like a person instead of an obligation? This isn't fair. Her voice cracked. You're twisting everything. I love you, Mom. You know I love you. Do you? Because love isn't just a word, Sarah. It's action. It's showing up. It's caring about someone even when it's inconvenient. And you haven't done any of that for years. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe you're making this about you when David is fighting for his life. What kind of mother are you? The question hit like a slap, but I didn't back down. I'm the kind of mother who's finally learning that loving you doesn't mean destroying myself. I'm realizing that giving you everything hasn't made you love me more. It's just taught you that I don't matter. You do matter. You matter so much that I'm here, begging you to save my family. Doesn't that tell you something? Yes. It tells me that I matter when I'm useful. It tells me that you'll show up at my door when you need $90,000, but you couldn't show up on Christmas Eve when I needed basic human decency. She wiped her face, smearing mascara across her cheek. So, you're punishing me? You're going to let David die to teach me a lesson about respect? David isn't going to die because of me, Sarah. If he dies, it's because of a medical crisis that has nothing to do with me. I'm not responsible for fixing every crisis in your life, especially when you've made it clear I'm not even welcome in your life when there isn't a crisis. But you have the money. You have it sitting in a bank doing nothing. We need it. Your family needs it. How can you just sit on it while we're suffering? It's doing nothing? Sarah, that money is my survival. That's my food when I'm too old to work. That's my medical bills. That's the difference between having a roof over my head and being homeless. I'm 69 years old. I don't have years to rebuild that savings. If I give it to you, I have nothing. You have me. She said it like it was obvious. You have me and the kids. We'll take care of you. The words hung in the air, and I saw the future she was offering. Me, dependent on a daughter who couldn't remember to call me on my birthday. Me, living in their guest room or some assisted living facility she visited twice a year. Me, having given everything and receiving scraps in return for the rest of my life. No, I said quietly. I can't trust that. What? She looked genuinely shocked. Sarah, you've shown me who you are. For years now, you've shown me I'm not a priority. Why would I trust you to take care of me when you can't even be bothered to include me in your life now? Mom, I know I haven't been perfect. But I'm asking you to look past that, to be the bigger person, to help us because that's what family does. Family goes both ways, Sarah. Family doesn't only show up when they need money. Family doesn't exclude you from Christmas and then demand your life savings a month later. So you're just going to say no? You're going to let us lose everything? I took a deep breath. I don't know yet. I told you I'd give you an answer tomorrow, and I will. But I need you to understand something. If I do this, if I give you this money, it doesn't fix what's broken between us. It doesn't erase the hurt. And it doesn't mean I'm going to keep accepting whatever treatment you decide to give me. I don't understand what you want from me. I said I was sorry about Christmas. What else do you want? I want you to see me. My voice broke. I want you to see me as a person, not just as a resource. I want you to care about my life, my feelings, my needs. I want you to call me because you miss me, not because you need something. I want to matter to you the way you've always mattered to me. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, maybe. Or guilt. I do see you, Mom. I do. But even as she said it, I knew it wasn't true. She saw a version of me she'd constructed. The perpetually available mother. The endless well of resources and forgiveness. She didn't see Helen. She probably never had. I need you to leave now, I said quietly. I need to think. I'll call you in the morning with my decision. Mom? Please, Sarah, just go. She walked back to her Mercedes, and I watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the darkness. I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling every one of my 69 years. Inside, I didn't turn on the lights, just sat in my chair by the window, thinking about choices and consequences and what it means to be a mother. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I love you, Mom. Please remember that when you're making your decision. I love you, and I need you. I stared at those words. I love you. Did she? Or did she love what I could do for her? I thought about Dr. Phillips's question. What kind of mother did I want to be? Not the martyred saint who sacrificed everything. Not the doormat who accepted any treatment. But what was the alternative? Maybe there was a middle ground. A mother who could love deeply but also have boundaries. Who could give generously but not at the expense of her own survival. Who could say no when no was the right answer. But was this the right time for that no? With David in ICU, with my grandchildren potentially losing their father, with Sarah desperate and terrified? I didn't know. God help me, I didn't know. I stayed up all night, watching the clock tick toward morning, toward the moment when I'd have to call Sarah and tell her who I'd decided to be. The woman who gave everything, or the woman who finally chose herself. Both choices felt like losing, but one of them felt like surviving. At 6 a.m., I called Sarah. She answered on the first ring, voice hoarse. "Mom? I'll give you the money," I said, "but I have conditions." "Anything." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. You'll sign a promissory note, legal and binding. You'll pay me back over 5 years at a reasonable interest rate. If you default, I can take legal action." Silence. Then, carefully, "Mom, we're family. We don't need legal documents." "Yes, we do. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." More silence. Finally, "Okay, fine. Whatever you need. I'll contact my bank at 9. The money should be in the hospital's account by end of business today. Send me the paperwork for the promissory note by this afternoon." "I will. Mom, I really appreciate this. You're saving our lives." "How's David doing?" "Still critical. But knowing we can keep him here makes all the difference." "Tell them I love them," I said, and hung up. I called my bank at 9:01 a.m. By 9:45, I'd initiated a wire transfer for $90,000, keeping only $4,000 for myself, for emergencies, for survival. The bank manager looked concerned. "Mrs. Morrison, are you sure? This is your entire retirement fund." "No," I admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." When I signed the final page, she squeezed my hand. "I hope whoever this is for is worth it." I didn't answer. Maybe this wasn't about her worth. Maybe it was about mine, about being able to look at myself in the mirror and know that I'd done what I thought was right, even when it hurt. Around 5 p.m., Sarah texted. "Hospital confirmed they received the payment. David's staying in ICU. They think he'll pull through. Thank you, Mom." I sent back, "Good." Then, "I need that promissory note by tomorrow." No response. The next morning, nothing. No paperwork, no call. I waited until noon, then called her. "Mom, hi, I've been meaning to call." "Where's the promissory note?" "Right, about that. David's lawyer said it might take a few days to draft something proper." "Sarah, you can download a template online in 5 minutes." "I know, but David wants it done right. He's very particular. You understand." "I understand that you made a promise and you're already breaking it. That's not fair. Mom, David almost died. Can you please just give us a little grace? We'll get you the paperwork, just not today." I hung up. My hands weren't shaking this time. They were steady, cold, certain. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Mr. Brennan was older than me, with kind eyes that had probably seen every family drama imaginable. I told him everything. "Did you get anything in writing?" he asked. "Texts, emails, any documentation of her agreeing to pay you back?" "Just the phone call where she said she would." He sighed. "That's going to be hard to enforce. Without written agreement, especially between family members, courts generally view large monetary transfers as gifts, not loans." The word hit me like a punch, gift. However, if she continues to acknowledge the debt in texts or emails that could establish intent to repay, try to get her to put something in writing. Anything. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched David's recovery from a distance. Sarah posted updates on Facebook. David was out of ICU. David was walking. David was going home. Photos of the whole family together, grateful, blessed. I wasn't in any of the photos. I wasn't mentioned in any of the posts, like my $90,000 had materialized out of thin air. I texted Sarah every 3 days, still waiting on that promissory note. The responses were always the same. Soon. David's still recovering. Stop pressuring us. 3 weeks after I'd wired the money, Sarah called. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Okay. I sat down, sensing this wasn't going to be good. David and I have been talking, and we think it's best if we consider the money you gave us as an early inheritance. You know, money we would have gotten eventually anyway. That way there's no awkward debt hanging over our relationship. I couldn't breathe. Early inheritance? It makes sense, right? You're 69. That money would eventually come to me anyway. And honestly, asking us to pay back $90,000 when we're already drowning in medical debt, it's not realistic. We have 2 kids to raise. We have a mortgage. You promised. My voice sounded strangled. You looked me in the eye and promised you'd pay me back. I know, and we will, eventually, when we can. But we can't have you hounding us about it every few days. Sarah, that was my retirement fund. That was everything I had. Without that money, I have nothing. Don't be dramatic. You have your job. You have Social Security when you retire. You'll be fine. I'm 69 years old. I can barely stand for full shifts anymore. I can't work forever, and when I can't work, I'll have nothing to live on because I gave it all to you. Then maybe you shouldn't have given it to us if you couldn't afford it. Her voice rose, defensive. I didn't force you, Mom. You offered. And now you're making me feel guilty about accepting help when my husband almost died. That's not fair. Here is the condensed version, reduced by 30%, approximately 3,640 words. I couldn't speak. She was rewriting history right in front of me, turning my sacrifice into my fault. Look, she continued, her voice softening. I'm grateful for what you did. Really. But you need to accept that this is the situation now. The money is gone. We can't pay it back anytime soon. And honestly, it was going to be mine eventually anyway. You don't have anyone else to leave it to. So that's it? You're stealing $90,000 from your own mother and calling it an inheritance? Stealing? How dare you? I'm not a thief. You gave me that money willingly. You can't take it back now just because you regret your decision. I don't regret helping you. I regret trusting you. I regret believing that my own daughter would keep her word. This is exactly why we need some distance, Sarah said coldly. You're being manipulative and guilt-tripping me. I need to focus on my family and David's recovery. I think it's best if we take a break from each other for a while. A break? I laughed, high and hysterical. Sarah, we weren't exactly close before this. What exactly are we taking a break from? I'm hanging up now. When you're ready to have a civil conversation, you can call me. Until then, I need space. The line went dead. I sat there in my apartment, phone in my hand, and felt something fundamental break inside me. Not my heart exactly. My heart had been breaking slowly for years. This was different. This was the death of hope. The final understanding that my daughter was not who I'd needed her to be, who I'd believed she was, who I'd raised her to be. She'd taken my entire life savings and called it an early inheritance. She'd made a promise and broken it without remorse. She'd gaslit me into thinking I was the problem, and now she was punishing me for being upset about it. This was who she was, and I'd just been too devoted, too desperate, too blind to see it. I called Mr. Brennan the next day. He listened patiently, then delivered the news I'd already known was coming. Without documentation, you don't have a case. The transfer was voluntary. She's technically right that family transfers are generally considered gifts in the absence of formal loan agreements. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. There's nothing you can legally do. $90,000. My entire future. Gone. I stopped sleeping. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. every night, heart pounding, mind racing through calculations. $4,312. That's what I had left. My rent was $850 a month. The math was simple and terrifying. I had maybe 4 months before I was completely broke. I picked up every shift I could at the diner. My feet swelled so badly I had to buy compression socks. My back screamed every time I bent down, but I couldn't stop, because resting meant thinking, and thinking meant facing what I'd done. April turned into May. Sarah's Facebook was a constant stream of normal life resuming. David back at work. Birthday parties, date nights at expensive steakhouses, new patio furniture, plans for Disney World. They were spending money like water while I was rationing groceries and walking instead of driving to save gas. Rita found me crying in the walk-in freezer on a Tuesday afternoon. Okay, that's it, she said, pulling me out. You look like you've aged 10 years in 2 months. So I told her. Everything. Rita listened, her face getting harder with each detail. When I finished, she said something I'll never forget. Helen, you didn't lose that money to bad luck. You lost it to a choice. Your daughter chose to take it and not give it back. That's theft dressed up in family obligation language. And you need to stop protecting her from the consequences of being a thief. She's my daughter. And you're her mother, which means she should be taking care of you, not robbing you blind. What she did is financial abuse, plain and simple. The word abuse made me flinch. That's too strong. Is it? She isolated you emotionally. She took your resources under false pretenses. She's gaslighting you. Helen, if a husband did this to a wife, we'd call it what it is. Why is it different because she's your daughter? Rita leaned forward. You need to tell people what she did. Not to punish her, but to protect yourself. I can't. It's family business. Family business is her excuse to keep you silent. Don't let her. I went home that night and wrote a Facebook post. Vague enough for plausible deniability, specific enough that anyone who knew us would understand. Sometimes you give everything to the people you love most, and they take it without gratitude or reciprocity. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you worst. I'm learning that love without boundaries isn't love. It's just slow destruction with a noble name. I hit post, then turned off my phone, terrified of what morning would bring. My phone had 43 notifications at 6 a.m. Most were supportive, but there were other messages too. From David's cousin Jennifer, from Sarah's college roommate Melissa, from 3 different people saying, I'm so sorry this happened to you too. The word stopped me cold. Jennifer told me that David and Sarah had borrowed $15,000 from David's parents last year for a business investment. They'd promised to pay it back within 6 months. It had been 14 months. When Patricia and Gerald stopped asking, Sarah accused them of being greedy. Melissa had a similar story. $5,000 for emergency car repairs, never repaid. When Melissa finally asked about it, Sarah said, I thought that was a gift. There were others, small amounts. Sarah's old boss, a sorority friend, David's business partner, a pattern. My daughter was a con artist, and I'd been her biggest mark. I felt sick. The woman I'd raised was someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe she was someone I'd created by never setting boundaries, by always rescuing her, by teaching her that she could take, and there would never be consequences. I called Mr. Brennan again. Does this change anything legally? It establishes a pattern of behavior, which might help in a civil case. But without documentation, you're still looking at a he said, she said situation. And civil cases are expensive. So she just wins? I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. Sometimes that's how it works. But powerless wasn't the same as helpless. I couldn't get my money back. But I could stop being silent. I spent a week writing every detail, every betrayal, every broken promise. Careful, factual, unemotional. Just the truth. I showed it to Rita and Dr. Phillips. They both said, Are you sure? Once you post this, there's no taking it back. I was sure. Staying silent was killing me. I posted it on a Saturday morning. A full account of the last 6 months, including the amount, the broken promises, the early inheritance declaration, and the pattern with other people. I ended with, I'm not posting this for revenge. I'm posting it because staying silent was making me complicit in my own abuse. I'm done being silent. The post went viral within my small community. It took Sarah 3 hours to respond, on her own Facebook page. I'm devastated by the lies being spread about me online. My mother is going through some mental health issues and has created a fictional narrative where I'm the villain. For those asking, yes, she did give us money during David's medical crisis. It was offered freely as a gift. I never promised to pay it back. She's rewriting history because she regrets her generosity. It's sad, and I hope she gets the help she needs. Mental health issues. Delusions. She was publicly declaring me mentally incompetent to discredit my account. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. With rage. Pure, clean rage. I screenshot her post and added it to mine. This is called DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's a common tactic of people caught in wrongdoing. I have text messages showing her promising to pay me back. I have witnesses to her taking money from others. I'm not mentally ill. I'm just done being manipulated. The comments exploded. I posted screenshots. Jennifer and Melissa and 2 others posted their own experiences. The narrative shifted. Sarah called me for the first time in 6 weeks. "How could you?" she was screaming. "You've destroyed my reputation. You've destroyed my life." I told the truth, I said calmly. If the truth destroys your reputation, maybe the problem isn't me. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman, and I will never forgive you for this. You're dead to me. Then I guess we're even. Because I've been dead to you for years. I just didn't realize it until now. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you? What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments. I truly want to know what you think. She hung up. I sat in my apartment, shaking, waiting to feel guilty or scared. But I didn't feel any of those things. I felt free. 3 days later, Patricia Chen called me. "Helen, it's Patricia. I saw your posts, and I want to apologize to you. That I hadn't expected. Gerald and I knew Sarah had issues with money. We knew she'd taken from us and likely others, but we told ourselves it was just immaturity. We enabled her, and then she did the same thing to you, only worse. I'm so sorry, Helen. We should have warned you. I'm calling because Gerald and I want to help. We can't give you the full amount, but we'd like to send you $20,000, not as a loan, as a gift, to help you rebuild what Sarah took." I started crying. Ugly, grateful tears. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do. And because you were put in an impossible position and you chose to help your child, even when she didn't deserve it. That takes a kind of love I'm not sure I'm capable of, but I can show gratitude for it." The check arrived a week later. $20,000. With a note from Patricia. "You deserved better from all of us." It wasn't enough to replace what I'd lost, but it was enough to breathe. Enough to not panic every time I thought about the future. Sarah's response was radio silence. She deleted her post, locked down her accounts, and disappeared from social media. Mutual acquaintances told me she'd started telling people I had dementia, that she was the real victim. But the people who mattered knew the truth. 2 months later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mom?" It was Sarah. Her voice small, uncertain. "Yes. I wanted to tell you that David and I are going to marriage counseling. The therapist thinks I have some issues with money and boundaries. She suggested I call you to apologize." The therapist suggested it. Not that she wanted to. "I'm sorry for how I handled everything. I should have paid you back." Should have. Past tense. Not I will pay you back. Is that all? I don't know what else you want me to say. I want you to mean it, Sarah. I want you to actually be sorry, not just say the words because your therapist told you to. I want you to take responsibility for stealing from me and lying about it. But I don't think you can do that. I do understand. It's just complicated, Mom. It's not complicated. You took money you promised to return and you didn't return it. You lied. You manipulated. You gaslit me. That's not complicated. It's just wrong. Fine. You're right. I'm terrible. Is that what you want to hear? No. I want you to actually change. But I don't think you will. And I can't keep waiting for you to become someone you're not. So what? You're giving up on me? I thought about that question for a long moment. Was I done, or was I finally starting? I'm done accepting less than I deserve. If that means we don't have a relationship, then that's what it means. I love you, Sarah. I will always love you. But I won't let you hurt me anymore. The door is open if you ever want a real relationship, one based on mutual respect and honesty. But if you're just calling to perform an apology because your therapist told you to, then no. I'm not interested. You're being unreasonable. Maybe, but I'd rather be unreasonable than destroyed. I hung up. And this time, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't second-guess myself. I'd spent my whole life being the mother who sacrificed everything, who accepted any treatment, who loved without limits or boundaries. And where had it gotten me? Broke, alone, and used. Now I was choosing something different. I was choosing myself, not in a selfish way, but in a necessary survival way. I was choosing to believe that I mattered, that my needs were valid, that I deserved basic human decency. Sarah might never understand that. She might spend the rest of her life believing I was the villain. But I couldn't control her narrative anymore. I could only control mine. And my narrative was this. I was a mother who loved deeply, who gave generously, who showed up even when it hurt. But I was also a woman who finally learned that love without boundaries isn't love. It's just self-destruction with a noble name. It's been 8 months since that last phone call. 8 months of learning to live in the wreckage of what I thought my life would be and discovering it's not wreckage at all. It's just different. The money Patricia sent gave me breathing room. I worked with a financial advisor who helped me create a realistic plan. I can't retire at 70, but maybe at 73 if I'm careful. I downsized to a smaller apartment, cheaper rent. I sold the furniture that didn't fit. Turns out, I don't need much. I cut back to part-time at the diner. My body couldn't sustain full-time anymore. Rita understood, but the truth is, I need to work, not just for the money. I need the routine, the purpose. I blocked Sarah on Facebook, not out of spite, but self-preservation. Every photo of her smiling family was a knife in my chest, and I decided I didn't need to keep stabbing myself. I joined a support group for estranged parents. Every Tuesday night, 8 of us meet and tell our stories. Mothers and fathers cut off by their adult children for reasons that range from understandable to inexplicable. There's a woman named Margaret. She's 76, estranged from both daughters for 12 years. She told me something I think about almost every day. You'll spend a long time trying to figure out what you did wrong, she said. You'll replay every moment, every choice, and maybe you'll find it. But here's what I learned. Even if you'd done everything perfectly, there's no guarantee it would have turned out different. Because at some point, they became adults with their own choices, their own values, their own damage. You can't control that. You can only control what you do now. What I do now. That's the question I wake up with every morning. Who am I now that I'm not Sarah's mother in any meaningful sense? I'm still figuring it out. I started painting. Rita's sister teaches a class at the community center. I'm terrible at it, but there's something satisfying about putting color on canvas, about creating something that didn't exist before. My paintings look like a child did them, but they're mine. That counts for something. I reconnected with my sister in Arizona. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. I called her, told her everything. She said, I never liked Sarah much. She always seemed cold, but you loved her so much I figured I must be wrong. We talk once a week now. Video calls where she shows me her garden and I show her my paintings, and we laugh about getting old. It's not deep, but it's consistent. It matters. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a mother. For so long, I thought it meant endless giving, endless sacrifice, putting your child's needs so far above your own that you disappeared. But I'm starting to understand that what I modeled wasn't love. It was codependency dressed up in noble language. I taught Sarah that she was the center of the universe, that her needs mattered more than anyone else's, that people existed to serve her. And then I was shocked when she treated me exactly the way I'd taught her to. I don't think I ruined her. She made her own choices. She chose to lie, to manipulate, to take without giving back. But I do think I failed to prepare her for the reality that love is reciprocal, that relationships require effort from both people, that taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. If I could go back, I'd set boundaries. I'd say no sometimes. I'd teach her that my needs mattered too. Maybe she'd have resented me. Maybe we'd still be estranged. But at least I wouldn't have sacrificed myself on the altar of her comfort. I think about the grandchildren sometimes. Emma and Jacob. They're 8 now. I've missed 2 years of their lives. I wonder if they ask about me, if I exist in their world at all. It hurts, that wondering. But it's a different kind of hurt. It's grief instead of desperation. Grief I can live with. Last week, I got a letter, handwritten address. My heart jumped when I saw Sarah's handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was short. One page. Mom, I've been in therapy for 6 months now. Real therapy. My therapist has helped me see some patterns in my behavior that I didn't want to see. I'm not ready to talk yet, and I don't know if I ever will be. But I wanted you to know that I heard what you said about boundaries and respect and reciprocity. I'm working on it. I don't know if that matters to you anymore, but I wanted you to know. Sarah. I read it 5 times, looking for a hidden apology, for a promise to pay me back. But there was nothing else, just those words. I haven't responded yet. I don't know if I will, because the question isn't whether she's changing. The question is whether I'm willing to risk being hurt again on the possibility that she might. I'm not sure I am, and I'm learning that's okay. That protecting myself isn't cruel or unforgiving. It's just honest. Maybe someday we'll rebuild something. Maybe it'll be years from now. Maybe it'll be a different relationship, one with boundaries and mutual respect. Maybe it'll never happen at all. Both futures are possible. I'm trying to make peace with not knowing which one I'll get. What I do know is this. I'm 69 years old. I've made mistakes. I've loved imperfectly. I've given too much and asked for too little. But I'm still here, still standing, still learning, still becoming someone I can respect when I look in the mirror. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. To anyone listening who sees themselves in my story, who's been used or dismissed or treated like their only value is what they can give, I want you to hear this. Your love matters. But so do you. You are not selfish for wanting to be treated with basic human decency. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for expecting reciprocity from the people who claim to love you. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's just slow destruction with a noble name. And you deserve better. We all do. I don't know what the rest of my life looks like. I don't know if Sarah and I will ever have an honest conversation. I don't know if Emma and Jacob will ever know their grandmother. But I know I'm going to be okay. Not because my circumstances are perfect. They're not. I'm still broke. Still alone in many ways. Still carrying the weight of a broken relationship I can't fix. But I'm okay because I finally understand that my worth doesn't come from how much I give or how much I sacrifice or how perfectly I perform the role of mother. My worth is inherent. I matter because I exist. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because it's all any of us really have. I'm Helen Morrison. I'm 69 years old. I'm a mother who learned too late that loving yourself isn't selfish. And I'm still here, still learning, still growing into the woman I was always supposed to be. That's my story. Thank you for listening to it. Thank you for being here with me through all of it. I hope somewhere in these words you found something that helps you with your own journey, your own pain, your own impossible choices. We're all just doing the best we can with what we know. And when we know better, we do better. I'm finally doing better. And that, after everything, feels like enough.